joined us tonight. I'm here with a wonderful holistic veterinarian, Dr. Gerald Buchoff, and this is actually a part 2 of how to keep your animals living healthier and longer lives. And we feel this is a timely discussion because people have a lot of questions right now. Hopefully in a few months, this will be a non-issue, but people do have some questions, and feel free to post those. And also let other people know that you're watching this. Do what you have to do to let others know. So thank you so much for being here tonight, Dr. Buchoff.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be on your show, and I have a lot of regard for all that you do.
Oh, thank you so much. Likewise, Dr. Buchoff it's now been over 30 years, right, as a holistic veterinarian in New Jersey?
Oh, no. Well, let's see, 95.
Okay.
Was when I turned to the light side.
Okay, so before that you were...
the truthful side. Well, I've been a veterinarian since 1980.
Okay, so yeah, going about 30 years of veterinary practice, and so much of that has been... Oh, okay, math. That's right.
Well, 40 years as of October. Yeah.
So, Dr. Buchoff is very well respected in the state of New Jersey and elsewhere. And so we're just really pleased to have him here. We have some really interesting topics, and we're going to start off with just asking him about, what kind of cutting edge things are going on? What do you see that you're finding you use in your practice that's really benefiting animals?
Well, something that we just got the other day that's pretty exciting was a heater for use during anesthesia so that the animal breathes in warm air.
Nice.
And it's been very successful at keeping their body temperature up, because that is a concern.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Very nice.
But, and I consider that kind of holistic. It's a different way of looking at things.
Yeah. And I'm assuming it makes them just on some level, even if they're under anesthesia, just more comfortable.
Yeah, it's pretty natural because you're heating them from the inside out rather than a heating pad on the outside.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, and what else are you using that you like in your practice? What are your favorite things?
Oh gosh, when people ask me what holistic medicine is, I have to rattle off this long list, and I can't say that anything is phenomenally advantageous over others, because they're all very effective. If I were to say what's my favorite form of healing from a practitioner, and this goes for human and animal, is homeopathy, because homeopathy really can change the vital force of an animal and change them permanently and completely. So it's not just changing symptoms, it's not covering anything up. It's actually changing the animal's energy so they are healthier in reality, if that makes any sense. Yes. So so the other things, acupuncture and chiropractic, I love them. Herbs, we use Western, we use Chinese, we use Indian, Ayurvedic. They all have their place. They all have, I have some specifics in each one that I use for specific things, like pyometra. A lot of people, if their pets get pyometra, if they have an unspayed female, of course, cat or dog, with the hormonal imbalance, it can cause pus to fill up in the uterus. So if the uterus is filled with pus, it's obviously a dangerous thing. And every vet that I've ever known will just open them up and take out the uterus, spay the dog or cat, and call it a day. Well, guess what? There are people who they kept their animal unspayed for a reason. They really want to have their animal breed. And so with an herb called Exapar, it's actually a combination that I get from India. With this Exapar, you can cleanse the uterus and actually return the animal's uterus to full health, and they can go ahead and breed again. So, nobody knows about this. I know it because I've been in India and I was introduced to it by the Dabur company.
Okay.
But yeah, so chiropractic, acupuncture, herbs, homeopathy, which I mentioned, aromatherapy, which is basically a form of herbs, but through diffusion or through the skin. And of course, there are essential oils of herbs that can also be put in the mouth or in the food.
Mhm.
There's ozone, and now you're touching upon my new best friend, and for about the last 10 years, I love ozone. Ozone is remarkable in not only killing virus and bacteria, and you touched upon the coronavirus that we're dealing with, and I hope they wake up to the fact that ozone is very effective in viral infections. We'll get back to that sometime
Yeah,
this
definitely. I'm
evening.
sure we're going to talk more about that.
Yeah, excuse the cough. I'm coming off of an allergic problem.
Oh, no, take your time.
Yeah, a little bit of asthmatic reaction.
Oh.
Not dogs and cats, don't worry.
Right.
But the pollens are just starting.
Yes.
And I'll get back to the ozone in a little while too. But
Okay.
there's also the Beamer, which again is one of my new favorite friends because it actually does things that other modalities cannot touch. You know,
Mhm.
they get used Chinese herbs to increase circulation, but you're mostly talking about the large blood vessels. And the large blood vessels comprise only about 26% of the total circulation.
Mhm.
Most of the circulation is tiny, tiny, tiny blood vessels that you can't even see. And the each of those blood vessels has a little bit of muscular tissue around them, just
Mhm.
these little bands. And the Beamer can actually cause them to squeeze 3 to 5 times per minute. And that is phenomenal in increasing the blood circulation and therefore a lot of other things. The whole functionality of the body, certainly the immunity, just so many things.
And I don't want to interrupt you, but so maybe help people understand if they haven't seen a Beamer or used a Beamer or what that is. What if you could
Oh, good.
describe
Thank
it?
you. So the Beamer, most people, when they use a Beamer, they use this body length for human body length pad called the B body, and it's attached to a computer called the B box, and you can set it many different settings. But it is user friendly. You don't have to know a whole lot about it because you can't do any harm if you set it incorrectly. And there is no such thing as incorrectly because there's no set guidelines for using this. It is so you're not actually invading the body. Okay, there's nothing that's connecting into the body. So it's much like charging your cell phone or something like that on an induction pad. So
Mhm.
it's an induction treatment. And the signal put out by it, it's done through um, PEMF, electromagnetic pulsating electromagnetic field, but it's not the electromagnetic field that's important. It's the signal that the animal is getting that goes to those little tiny muscles on the little tiny blood vessels.
Mhm.
And so that is just phenomenal. I've been able to pull rabbits out of the hat in a medical sense,
Yeah.
cases that otherwise would not have responded.
Yeah.
But
And
it's
and I
not a
can.
primary treatment. It's
Mhm.
always uh, something that helps other treatments because
Mhm.
you're giving them oxygen, you're giving medicine, you're doing whatever, and you're making the blood move. So yeah,
Right. Okay.
going to help.
It's wonderful. I use one, and technically right now the one they have isn't marketed for small animal. They do have an equine Beamer that's that's out there and available, but Dr. Buchoff can use his Beamer in his practice as a veterinarian. It's a little different. Um, so I'm sure that's a wonderful enhancement for your clients to be able to use that. So also tell us a little bit more about the ozone. You were talking about that before, and that probably is of great interest to a lot of people for a lot of different reasons.
Right, ozone does amazing things besides killing bacteria and virus and fungi, it also improves the function of mitochondria. And I might have mentioned this in the last show that we had, but mitochondria are really the most important thing that you can improve the health of, that within each cell in the body. Each cell in the body can have several or many mitochondria in it. And those are the powerhouses of each cell. Those are the energy spots. And if you can improve their function, you can improve the health of any animal easily. So by giving oxygen, by giving fluids, you're helping the health through improving the function of your mitochondria. By if you have cancer, God forbid, your pet, and you want to, you can help the mitochondria function better using something called a keto diet, a ketogenic diet, so that instead of the body relying on sugar to give energy, instead you're giving fat, lipids, to give energy to the body. And cancer does not survive well. If cancer cells do not survive well unless they have lots of sugar. So if you starve the cells from sugar, theoretically at least, you should get cessation of the function of cancer cells. And we see it to some extent. We don't see it to as great an extent as we wish we would. Maybe, with developing better and better keto diets, we will. We'll see. We'll see what happens. But the theory is there, and it does make some sense. So the big thing we do with ozone is something called biophotonic blood treatment. And biophotonic blood treatment is where you take 2 cc's of blood, tiny bit, less than a half of a teaspoon per 10 pounds of pet. So if you have a cat that's 10 pounds, you'll take 2 cc's. If you have a dog that's 50 pounds, you'll take 10 cc's. Not very much, okay? And you mix it with that much ozone, 2 cc's to 10 cc's. And then you mix it also with saline, okay, salt water, basically, sterile salt water. And then pass that mixture through ultraviolet lights, past ultraviolet lights. And that, I can't tell you exactly, and I don't know if anybody can tell you exactly what happens, but it seems to not only kill virus and bacteria and all that, and it's only a small amount. So how is it doing that? It's teaching the rest of the cells somehow to kill off these bugs. And it also is, I've seen it do miraculous things in cancer, against cancer cells. I've had a golden retriever with cancer of its upper leg, just above the elbow, and dog couldn't walk on that leg at all. And then it was walking, and then time went by, and we took an X-ray, and there was no cancer. We had, I think, 2 or 3 cases of brain cancers, brain tumors, that cleared up using the biophotonic blood treatment. I think lymphoma, lymphosarcoma, and hemangiosarcomas also.
That's incredible. So, I mean, it's definitely a wonderful thing that it can heal these major devastating diseases. I'm just curious, do people use the ozone now for kind of more everyday things like common viruses and parasites, things like that? Can it be?
Well, if you have bacterial infection, viral infection, parasitic infection, it's because your body's not really that healthy.
Yeah.
In the wild, if an animal is extremely healthy, they're very exposed to lots of things, but they're healthy. They're not getting parasites. They're not getting these things. And as a veterinarian, it's important for me to keep that in mind we're talking about the coronavirus. Well, not everybody gets it, or not everybody gets a noticeable case of it. Well, that's because of differing immune systems, how healthy people are. So that's a really important thing to always keep in mind. And ozone does help in keeping the immune system very strong. Would you use it on a daily basis? I know of some people who do, and they actually bubble ozone through water and drink it and give it to their pets to drink, although it doesn't taste so, it doesn't taste like normal water. It's kind of fizzy and has a little bit of an off flavor, but it's very healthy. Some people put it in the air, so it's just a low level, but it does have some benefit. And of course, it does kill a lot of the microbes in the dust in the air.
So that's something people could access on their own, even just in their home? Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to mention something else. So there's something pretty recent that Karen Becker has really publicized a lot. Karen Becker is a wonderful blogger and videoer, and she just teaches a lot of good medicine. She's a very good friend of everybody in the holistic veterinary community. And she's been bestowing the virtues of neutering without removing the hormonal glands. So if it's a male, do a vasectomy and leave the testicles there. And that way the animal cannot reproduce. But by not removing the testicles, you're keeping them intact, you're keeping things natural. And with the female, taking out the uterus, but leaving the ovaries. We call that an ovary-sparing spay. And I would love everybody on this show to not only keep that in mind for themselves, but tell others, because this is a new wave. And it's based on new information because, as Karen points out, all kinds of cancers, like cancer of the spleen, which is so common, cancer of the bone, which is terribly common in very large dogs, cancer of the brain, I think lymphoma is one of these, and fibrosarcomas, and also so those cancers are increased in animals that are neutered and decreased if the animal's intact. It doesn't guarantee you that if you keep your animal intact hormonally that they won't get cancer. They still can, but they won't get 75 out of 100% cancer. 3/4 of dogs get cancer and 1/4 of cats get cancer. It's crazy. So, and also there's hormonal imbalances like Cushing's disease, etc., that are more likely if the dog is or cat is neutered, has its hormones removed, its ovaries and testicles. Also, knee ligaments, the anterior cruciate ligament in dogs, which is a very common anomaly, where a lot of dogs, mostly large, but it can be in any size dog, where they have a break in the ligament in the knee, and they're all of a sudden, they're running around the yard, make a sudden turn, breaking that ligament, and they're all of a sudden lame. Not necessarily painful lame, but holding the leg up totally. And so many vets will rush into doing surgery. I'll talk about that in a minute, but that can all be prevented by not neutering the animal. Again, no guarantee that if you take out the uterus, if you leave the ovaries and you leave the testicles, that won't happen, but it's much less likely.
So two questions about that. One is, it's funny because I always remember this because I wanted to not spay my dog Cheyenne, and I remember she's 7 now. So back when she was about 7 years ago, 6.5 years ago, I think you had said to me, "Be careful because I was living in a place that had unneutered males, German Shepherd and a Black Lab, and they were over 100 pounds. And you were like, you might want to get her spayed because you're not going to be able to get those dogs off her. And so I did because of the situation. But does this surgery mean that would not be an issue because she wouldn't go into heat? So that type of thing.
They'll still go into heat if you keep the ovaries in, sure, and the males will still want to go and find a mate.
Okay.
Definitely. And they will still go through the motions of mating too.
Okay.
But can't get pregnant.
But they just wouldn't get. And so my other question:
the females, when they're in heat, they won't bleed because there's no uterus.
Okay. So my other question, this is free advertising for Dr. Becker, because she puts out a product through Dr. Mercola, who's sort of like her partner. He does the human stuff.
Her boss.
Her boss. Okay. So they have a glandular support. And I was curious about that. If you feel that type of thing for people who did already, unfortunately, this wasn't something that we were aware of a few years ago or what have you, does that help at this point to give them a kind of glandular support?
Does she say so?
They have one. They have
No, I know. Does she say that's a replacement?
I don't know that she uses replacement, but they're just saying this could help with all the problems that come, including things like emotional, like, problems that dogs have, like behavioral issues that result from.
Okay, because as I understand it, the real function of a glandular and the theory is that you're taking, you're eating the same organ of another animal, a different species, to help your organ. So if you have, I guess, if you have a brain problem, it's good to eat brain tissue.
Yeah.
As gross as that might sound, kidneys, you should eat kidneys, etc. And it's been well proven that actually works. So, but if you eat, if you take the glandular for the uterus and the ovaries and you don't have them, I don't see. Well, I'm not the expert in this if it is true, but I don't see how it can help.
Yeah. People might want to go investigate that more.
Right. Thank you.
On their own. Yeah. Kind of threw that out of nowhere at you, but very interesting. And I'm kind of sad to hear that this is something that is just coming around. I wish this had been when I
know, really.
But that's why we're here, to talk about, different ways that now we can help our pets. So also you brought up laser and chiropractic, and I think you wanted to talk about them individually, but also combined, you mentioned.
Right. So laser and chiropractic are, should I say, functionally connected. Not too many people who even do them realize that. Chiropractic, you go down the spine and you actually make little manipulations. You don't crack bones or whatever they say, crunch this. It's very gentle usually. And by putting a motion into the spine, along the sides of the spine itself are hundreds of ganglia or nerve switches. And those nerve switches often get turned off by many reasons, by pollution, by stress, that's probably the biggest cause, by pain, if there's an accident or something. And so you want to turn them back on in order to have the maximum amount of health in the spine so that every nerve impulse gets to where it needs to get. And what I mean by that is in these little ganglia along the spine, they're nerve switches, meaning that a nerve from the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord, they bring a message down, they bring a nerve down, goes into that ganglia, and sends that message off to another nerve that then brings the message to the part of the body that the brain is trying to communicate with. So if you're doing chiropractic, you are turning on all those ganglia, all those nerve switches, so that the body has a maximum amount of communication. the brain, all the organs and glands and systems can communicate with each other, and then you have optimal function of the body. Well, so communication is really important on that macro level, the brain and all the organs and glands and systems working together. But how about within the liver, within the eye, within any part of the body? You have thousands, you have millions and millions of cells that need to work together. So what laser does, as opposed to acupuncture, laser copies the way cells communicate to each other. They do communicate to each other in a chemical way often, but perhaps 130 years ago, something like that, it was discovered by Russia that cells communicate by light, and they flash at each other at a specific frequency. So the cells of the liver flash at each other at 57 times per minute. The cells of a thyroid gland flash at each other 21 times per minute, etc. It goes on and on and on. Mm-hmm. And if you copy that frequency of flashing, you can, target certain organs. And let's say, I have a certain condition. It can be simple, like a bruise. It can be healing of the skin. It can be as complicated as cancer or whatever. And by using laser, you can address the communication between different cells, in the process of this disease condition that you want to make changes in. You want them to work optimally, communicate better. Of course, you don't want cancer cells to communicate well. So part of what a laser can do is actually cause them not to communicate well.
Oh, okay.
But mostly you're causing the immune system, the immune cells to work better together.
Okay.
So micro level, your laser, cell to cell, and a macro level, different organs and glands and systems working together. That's through chiropractic.
Okay, because I had always thought of laser as something for an injury.
Most people do. And it does work that way because there are specific frequencies. I think it's 9 that affects nerves and 16 that affects muscles. It might be backwards. And there's, you want to get the nerves that are involved with the pain response to calm down, to work together, to be uninflamed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So that's very interesting. I don't know that many people realize that you can use this for other conditions. So if this was like, say, something commonish, like, I don't know, unfortunately, like kidney disease in cats, that comes to mind.
Perfect.
Dealt with cats.
Yeah.
Where
laser for everything.
Do you literally put the laser where the kidneys would be, or do you?
Yeah. Although laser's an interesting thing. If you shine it on any part of the body, it's going to affect. That signal is going to go to all the cells in the body. It will only affect the ones that are receptive to that particular frequency. Uh-huh. So if let's say the animal has, I don't know, a sweater on. Well, that doesn't really matter because the laser goes right through it. Uh-huh. But let's say, I don't know, it's got a cast on or something, okay, and you laser the foot, the leg, to affect the kidneys. That would work because it goes through the water molecules in the cells.
Okay.
In the whole body.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
So maybe could you give us a couple of examples? And we talked about several different tools that you're using in your practice that I'm sure have done some wonderful things, but it's always interesting to hear stories of how these have affected real live animals. If you had any examples
of laser particularly?
or any of the things you talked about, or combination
Sure,
ozone or
sure.
anything that.
I don't know. I used to never be able to save animals from feline leukemia or feline infectious peritonitis.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, these are horrible, horrible diseases, viral diseases. And by using laser plus um, ozone in the biophotonic treatment, and usually also with a homeopathic remedy from certain companies like Guna in Italy and Heal in Germany. Um, and chiropractic is always important in these cases because you want the body to communicate well, besides on the cellular level by laser. Um, I've been able to save animals like that. Um, a broken bone, get it to heal twice as fast. You could probably just do that with Beamer alone.
It's great.
Um, and of course, using certain herbs like symphytum and homeopathy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's been so many exciting cases, neurological. Gosh, we were told in vet schools nerves do not heal or nerves do not regenerate. Well, guess what, folks? If you increase the blood circulation a lot using the Beamer, if you use aromatherapy with using helichrysum,
Mm-hmm.
um, sometimes if you use certain growth factors, um, there are ways of getting the nervous system to heal much quicker than what we used to understand. We know that, yeah, they might heal in a few years, if you have a brain injury.
Mm-hmm.
But using some of these modalities, you can hasten that a lot.
Okay, so that epilepsy also, that would be something that could possibly be.
Epilepsy, I love laser. Love, love, love laser and chiropractic get together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, remember I mentioned about the keto diet for
Mm-hmm.
cancer. Keto diet's really effective for seizures in 20% of the cases, the same as in people. So
Okay.
1 out of 5, you just change the diet and you don't have to do anything else.
Incredible.
Um,
Maybe talk a little bit more about essential oils, help people to understand how to properly use them. And
well, I think, if you take a course or really do your homework on the computer, you can learn about them. Don't accept all this fear mongering. There's fear mongering for everything there is. Um, you asked me what are some fun, good things to use. Neoplasine is an herb that you use for cancer. It can actually, if you put it on the cancer or in the cancer, a tumor rather, it can dissolve it. Um, and there's so many things out there in the internet. Oh, it doesn't work, or it works badly, or it causes good cells to go bad. Used properly, it works beautifully.
mm-hmm.
So that's again one of my favorite modalities. Um,
Wonderful.
so just about any modality, there's retractors or detractors, I should say.
Right.
So the idea of aromatherapy being dangerous for dogs and cats, it's phooey generally. All right.
Mm-hmm.
I've even seen somebody write out there that lavender is dangerous for dogs.
Mm.
What nonsense. There's
Yeah.
so much nonsense out there. Yes, be careful with cats, though. Not lavender specifically, but
Mm-hmm.
um, there are kind of a list of aromatherapy that you shouldn't use on cats.
Mm-hmm.
But there's other ways of doing it. You could take one drop of an oil, put it in your hand, and then rub them together, and really disperse it, and then give your cat a petting. Um, there, you can diffuse a lot of oils that you can't use on a cat.
Mm-hmm.
The aromatherapy got a bad rap from people who use tea tree oil on cats. That's very dangerous. It really is. There's a lot of hot oils, oregano, clove, things like that, that can be a little rough on animals, very rough on animals. And you have to dilute them. You have to know what you're doing. I love using either of those on warts. They work. They work nicely. So those are some good things. There's I mentioned about chiropractic, about anterior cruciate ligament ruptures in knees, and that you talk about cases that I used to have to do surgery. I love that surgery. It's one of my favorite surgeries, but I get to do it only a couple times a year anymore because chiropractic is so effective.
Oh, that's
It's
great.
just so effective. And if chiropractic doesn't work, then I'll do it. I'll use laser. If I don't see a good response in a couple of times, I'll keep doing the chiropractic, but I'll add in laser.
Okay.
And if that still doesn't work, which is very few cases, then I'll go to prolotherapy, which is injecting the joint itself, the knee joint, with something that actually causes the knee to respond with an inflammation. Okay, you're actually trying to cause inflammation so that the immune system comes to the rescue
Okay.
and does some healing there.
Mm-hmm.
And in just about every bone problem or joint problem, if you are not finding other things working, there's now stem cell therapy, which is, again, I think wonderful. It's expensive. That's why it's not your first choice.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say an animal has osteoarthritis, we're bone to bone, and it's really not getting around much at all. Well, you could take the dog's own stem cells or the cat's own stem cells by doing a surgery, taking out some fat from the inside of the animal, sending it to a laboratory where they extract the stem cells, send it to you overnight express 2 days later, and you can inject those stem cells into the different joints that are affected. And very often miraculous results. Did it with my own dog, and within 3 weeks they're brand new. The joints are basically like that of a puppy anymore. It's really, really very nice.
Is there any restriction on that? Like, as far as, do you have like age concerns with doing the surgery to extract it? And
No, take the normal precautions, good anesthesia, good preliminary blood work. We had a heartbreak a couple weeks ago where it was I think an 8-month-old dog with arthritis, osteoarthritis. Of course, it was a large breed dog, which are more prone to it, but that's so sad. And so I'm waiting to hear how the stem cells are working.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that one. Yeah, good.
So many
I made myself a list of things I want to make sure we touch upon.
Absolutely.
There's some more still. General immunity we'll talk about. But
Sure.
I'm just trying to think of other things. Arthritis, we never had really good handle on that. And now we have a lot of nice herbs and nutraceuticals that work well. In fact, it's so funny when I encounter a veterinarian who either doesn't know holistic medicine or thinks that it's phooey because they don't have much contact with it and they've just heard things. But I'll ask them, you mentioned about joints. I'll ask them if they use glucosamine and chondroitin, which are a mainstay in arthritis. And they'll say, yeah, I use that. I say, well, you're using holistic medicine. or do you use thistle, milk thistle? Oh, yeah, that's a normal thing to use. Oh, okay. Or do you use Yunnan Bayao, which is an herbal combination for dogs with hemangiosarcoma or any other internal bleeding? And they say, yeah, that's in general medicine. Well, 2 years ago or 5 years ago, those were totally holistic medicine doctors who use it, nobody else. So hopefully that'll continue, that they'll see the virtues. You mentioned helichrysum before. I mentioned it. You mentioned it. The other great use of that, again, this should be in general medicine, is to control bleeding, internal bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
So if I have a surgery that I know is going to be, prone to a lot of bleeding, I'll take a little helichrysum and put it under the tongue of that animal while it's still under anesthesia before I get started with the surgery, and it'll greatly decrease the bleeding, which is very nice.
Incredible. It really is. There's so many situations where people, I know, they feel like, well, there's just nothing else we can do. But there's just so many options out there. There's hope,
That's why I got into holistic medicine, man. Because I kept hearing that from my clients. Everybody asked me, well, how did you get into holistic medicine? I said, I listened to my clients. That's really how I did it.
Yeah. So you mentioned that was there something else we hadn't talked about that you...
Well, just general immunity, because we were talking about, there's this possible pandemic coming around, and what do we do about it? Because, we always ask ourselves these questions, certainly, and this really pertains to humans, although I'm not really professionally qualified, but I happen to be a human, and I can apply a lot of the principles that I know from animals and from general veterinary common sense. But if you, they say that the virus affects people more if they have problems with their lungs. Well, why not make your lungs healthy to prevent a bad case of coronavirus? Because I think all of us will get some kind of contact with it, maybe not an infection, but some kind of exposure of some sort. And it's just good to have your lungs be nice and healthy. So how do you do that? Talk to your doctor. I use a Beamer, and I employ what you mentioned before, glandulars. There's glandulars for the lungs. Great. Eat lung. Really. And you can do that by just taking a glandular pill. I use Standard Processes Allerplex, and that is really good for the lungs. They also have pneumotrophin PM, pneumotrophin PMG, and that helps the lungs be healthy. But even, just as important as protecting the lungs is improve your immunity. And so this, if there's a pandemic or anything like this for animals, same kind of thinking. Get the immune system strong. And the immune system is strong if you're giving good nutrition, if you're doing all the things we talked about in the last program, brushing the coat, brushing the teeth, thumping the thymus of your dog, right between its armpits, tapping its chest 10 times each day. Or if you're, really worried about its immune system, maybe 10 times twice a day. Protecting from outside influences that hurt the immune system. So wipe the paws when your pet comes in from outside, so that they don't have all these pollutants on their paws that they're going to then lick and get inside their bodies when they relax. Decrease the vaccinations, just give what's needed, and hopefully take blood tests instead of vaccines themselves as the animal gets older. It's called blood titers. Don't use harsh chemicals for flea and tick protection, because you can use aromatherapy. You can use essential oils. There's so many of them. We make it Pet Peeve, Pet Peeve Plus. And that's a combination of aromatherapy to repel fleas, ticks, mosquitoes, and flies, which, of course, each one of those can spread certain diseases like heartworm, etc. Just common sense. And my favorite of all is get away from foods that are cooked, feed raw food. raw, whole food that has plenty of nutrition, plenty of digestive enzymes. Okay, once you heat up food, you lose those digestive enzymes. You lose the bacteria, which are so important for the immune system, really important.
Yeah.
And you avoid the chemicals that are in processed foods, because so many of those chemicals have been well documented to have carcinogens. If you add artificial colorings, artificial flavorings, humectants to keep the food dry, whatever, preservatives, a lot of those can be cancer causing. So,
Yeah. And Dr. B actually has his own line of raw animal food, cat, dog food.
yeah, I formulate the longevity dog food and cat food.
Yeah.
And it has other things. So I didn't even mention them. You can add maitake and shiitake mushrooms to your food, to your pet's food, to improve its immune system. You can add cooked tomatoes, which have lycopenes, and these are things that I have in my longevity food. They have the lycopenes, they have the maitake and shiitake mushrooms already in there. They have ginger and garlic, which are also good for the immune system. For the ginger is great for the gastrointestinal system as well. So there's a lot.
Yeah, wonderful. These are all such wonderful options, and it brings hope to people, I think, to know, okay, there's something else I can try. There's other things out there. I was just reading an article about how animals used to live so much longer, and then the food thing really messed things up, like the dried.
Well, the documentation is that animals do live longer now, but not better. So living a healthy life, I think they live a lot shorter now. But because people have gotten, I don't know, to accept the notion, that your pet's going to someday have chronic disease. That's too bad. It's too bad that we accept that notion. They don't have to get diabetes and arthritis and hypothyroidism and all these nonsense diseases. They can live a really healthy life and live to nice, ripe old ages. I don't know if I mentioned in the last show, because this is something I'm so excited about when I looked at my numbers. I started in 1980 with, just being a graduate and doing conventional medicine. And in 95, after many months or many years of listening to my clients and starting to open my eyes, I switched over to adding holistic or alternative modalities as well. And when I look back at the transition period from that transition, so the average lifespan of animals before 95, and then those now, we've increased the lifespan of animals by 40%. So,
Huge.
That's with chiropractic, that's with food, that's with all those things that can really help them live longer. But I think just as important, live better and save people money.
Yeah. And I think so. I'm just so grateful that you're here talking about all these things, and I do hope people will share this or the replay, because this is important stuff, and there's a lot of people who don't realize that there's things that they can do there, and they're kind of thinking that there's just no hope left, and there can be. So please let other people know about this. So, and just out of curiosity, because I know that there's people who mentioned to me before the show who were interested in watching, they were curious about this whole coronavirus and animals transferring people. They're a little confused if animals can catch and
No.
What the deal is.
No. Keep your animals. Don't get rid of them. And if you get coronavirus, don't worry about kissing your dog or cat. They won't get it from you. I know there was this report in Korea or whatever of an animal that had a borderline positive reaction on the blood tests. It means they had some kind of an exposure to the protein, to the part of the virus. It doesn't mean that there were virus in the animal. It doesn't mean that they had, well, they certainly didn't have infection because they certainly didn't have any signs. But yeah, there was a positive, a borderline positive test. So yeah, there were traces of the virus there.
Good. Wonderful.
Nothing.
So if you're sequestered in your home, you can still cuddle with your pets. So that's
yes, they are your medicine. They are one of your very important immune supporters.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And don't forget the positives of a good environment for your pet. Music, amazing. Anything to reduce stress. Stress is the biggest suppressor of the immune system. Never forget that. So if you can keep stress down, there's a bunch of ways. So chiropractic is actually one of them, but music in the house, brushing them every day, removing the smell in their mouth that bothers them, brushing their teeth every day. Of course, you're also preventing dental disease.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to live with it, and pets have a very strong sense of smell and taste. So, yeah, you want to make sure that they're happy and healthy and comfortable. Giving them good bedding, and noticing what they like. If some pets want warm, they want to sleep on something, a towel or whatever. Some pets like cold, and they want to sleep on a tile surface. And even if you crate them, if that's what you do, or even if you like to have them to sleep in the bed with you, there's ways of providing the surfaces that they prefer. And if you do provide what they prefer, you are decreasing their stress. You'll and see what kind of music they do respond to.
And diffuse that lavender, because
diffuse lavender if you like. There's other things you can use. Rescue Remedy is very good at decreasing stress.
It's a homeopathic, right?
The Rescue Remedy. It's kind of like a homeopathic. It says on the label homeopathic. It's not a classic one though. It's a Bach flower remedy is more like what it is. Also CBD oil, very good for a lot of animals that have anxiety. So usually when they have a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of nervousness, I'll give them Rescue Remedy. If that's not enough, if they have like separation anxiety, which is stronger, I'll give them CBD oil. And if they're off the wall and really can't live a normal life, otherwise, I will go as far as giving them a drug, like Xanax. Don't like to, but sometimes it just makes their life better, and whatever makes their life better is the right thing to do. Sometimes just by increasing their intake of turkey. If you have a choice between different proteins, give them turkey. For some animals, that's stress relieving.
Okay.
So,
that's interesting. That's a good point for people to think about. I know sometimes people say if there's allergies, chicken is often what is triggering it. So, but I didn't think about turkey as a relaxer. So,
yeah, we'll also think of the energetics of food. Okay, turkey is cooling. Chicken is heating. Okay, these are from Chinese medicine. We've learned these energetics. Lamb is heating. Beef is neither one or the other. It's kind of neutral. Things like that. Duck is cooling. Okay, so these you can find these on the internet, but basically, I think of duck, turkey, and duck, turkey are the main ones for cooling.
Yeah, and fish too, right?
Fish is also cooling. But you don't want to use too much fish. Fish with 10 to 15% of the diet being fish is enough. Otherwise, you're messing around with the urinary tract too much. But yeah, and in the summertime, it's hot. The animal needs to cool off. Well, think in terms of duck and turkey a little bit more. Doesn't mean you switch to duck and turkey only. And of course, beef you can give at any time. And in the summer and in the winter time, maybe some more lamb or chicken because it's heating. Whatever. You just become more informed.
It's good to think about these things. Yeah, and how the seasons affect them as well. That's definitely like a Chinese medicine.
And one last thing before, you can go on and ask more questions, but you're in charge. It's your show. But I'd love to be on it. Is this nonsense about that Purina loves to confuse people, and I'm pretty upset with it. That they made this big mess about saying that no grain food can cause heart disease.
Right.
Okay, so let me at least make that clear. Yes, grain food is not good. Food that has grain in it, please stay away from. All right? If they have corn or wheat, they're going to, corn and wheat have gluten, and those are very inflammatory, and they do hurt the immune system. So make no mistake about it, they're not good. They cause allergies, they cause cancer. Okay, so what a lot of companies did when the public said, "Oh, we don't like grain," was they said, "Okay, we'll replace the grain with something else," and they placed it with worse things that were devoid of enough amino acids, and so dogs were getting heart disease. So, do you want to get heart disease, or do you want to get cancer? How about neither? How about going to raw diet that has no grain in it and none of these nonsense fillers of potatoes and starchy things. Give meat and vegetables and organ meats and bones or bone meal, and you're doing a whole lot better. Let's give our animals what they need. Let's let them live a long, happy life, and let's make them our pets and not our patients.
Yeah.
Really.
Sounds good to me. Absolutely.
Feed raw.
Yeah. I agree. Absolutely. And I know my animals are fans for sure, especially of the longevity. They really like Dr. B's food. So yeah, absolutely. They love it. I don't know, especially that beef. I don't know what it is, but it just looks good, honestly. When you look at it, it looks very fresh and bloody and things an animal would really like. You kind of intuitively know just by looking at it.
Always thinking of making it better for animals.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for all the work you do. If you wanted to find out more about Dr. Buchoff and his practice, I have up here on the screen his email address at holisticpetcarenj.com in New Jersey, and his food information is there too. And if you have anything questions for me, you can always reach me at intuitivetouchanimalcare.com, and I will always be happy to hear from you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being here, and have a good night, everyone. And thank you, Dr. B, for being here.
Thank you, Ann. You do wonderful work.
Thank you.